All eyes are on Wisconsin.
And that's because there's a big election to the state Supreme Court. It takes place Tuesday, and both Republicans and Democrats have paid unusual attention to a race of this sort. It has shattered all records to become the most expensive judicial election in the history of the US. Of note, donor Elon Musk. In fact, Mr. Musk just announced he is heading to the Midwest state to campaign for his choice to sit on the state Supreme Court. That is conservative Waukesha County Judge Brad Schimmel. His opponent is liberal, Dane County Judge Susan Crawford. Currently, the Wisconsin Supreme Court leans to the left with a 4-3 majority.
The race coffers have taken in more than $81 million, says the Brennan Center for Justice. The total of this $17 million has been donated by groups tied to Elon Musk. This comes amidst a pending lawsuit filed by Tesla to remove a Wisconsin law prohibiting vehicle manufacturers from selling cars directly to consumers.
Other pending cases before the court include ones relating to abortion, union rights, and voting rules. Both candidates have got very high-profile endorsements. Earlier this week, former President Barack Obama wrote on X, "If you live in Wisconsin, or have friends or family who do, there's an important Supreme Court race happening right now. And there's only one candidate ready to protect the fundamental rights and freedoms of Wisconsinites, Judge Susan Crawford."
President Trump, on the other hand, wrote this on Truth Social in parts. "All voters who believe in common sense should get out to vote early for Brad Schimmel." To discuss what's at stake is Bryna Godar, staff attorney, State Democracy Research Initiative at University of Wisconsin Lawsuit. Welcome to Rising, Bryna.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Sure. So why don't you give us a state of the race here? Is there any indication from polling which candidate is pulling out ahead? And this seems pretty unprecedented that this much money is being spent on a state Supreme Court race. Lay out sort of the background here for our viewers.
Yeah, so there have been some polls that indicate that Judge Crawford is ahead of Judge Schimmel, but those polls have some limited data. So it's not clear at this point who's going to come out ahead. In terms of spending, we saw already in 2023, the Wisconsin Supreme Court race was gaining unprecedented spending and national attention. It topped $50 million in that race. And this race has just far exceeded that. So in some ways, it's continuing a trajectory that we'd already seen in the state of Wisconsin Supreme Court races, gaining increased national attention and increased national spending. But it has really gone far and above what we already saw in 2023. And part of that is due to the attention from Elon Musk and President Trump and the funding from groups backed by Musk.
And on that topic, Bryna, it may be worthwhile for our audience to go into that in a little bit more detail, because there is this very large amount of money, about $17 million. I've seen other calculations of around $20 million being spent by either Musk or groups affiliated with him. Some of that money has been spent in this $100 to sign a petition scheme, which some people have concerns about, even though I guess it's not directly buying votes. And then a second element of all of this is that Tesla, as we alluded to, has a case that could end up before the Wisconsin Supreme Court. So if you could just sketch out those facets of the story for us, that'd be great.
Yeah, so, it's hard to know exactly what the reasons are for Elon Musk getting involved, but something he has specifically pointed to is the congressional maps and the possibility of those being challenged or changed in Wisconsin if the court retains a liberal majority after this election. There's no challenge currently pending, but that's something that he has pointed to. Others have raised this lawsuit that is pending by Tesla in a lower Wisconsin circuit court. It's not clear yet if that is something that would make it to the state Supreme Court. It's a challenge having to do with a state law that prohibits manufacturers from opening dealerships in the state. So there aren't any Tesla dealerships in the state, and it's challenging the application of that law to Tesla. So some have raised questions of whether that is a factor. It's hard to say, speak specifically to his motivations. And then we are also seeing, as you mentioned, these creative ways of getting involved and paying voters directly. And the payments to individuals to sign a petition against activist judges sort of fell in a gray area under Wisconsin's election bribery law. on whether they actually violated that law or not. However, we saw today that Elon Musk will be coming to the state over the weekend to do a rally and is giving $1 million to two people who have already voted in the Wisconsin Supreme Court election. And so that offer, as well as some other aspects of the rally, much more directly runs afoul of Wisconsin's election bribery law, which prohibits offering or giving anything of value in exchange for somebody to vote or in order to induce somebody to vote. And so just today, we've sort of seen more of a step from this gray area into a much clear-cut violation of the state's election bribery laws.
And just to correct myself, I think in the opening I referred to you as being at the University of Wisconsin Law Suit. That is obviously not correct. It's the University of Wisconsin Law School. So my apologies for that. As conservatives are getting involved in this race, we've seen a lot of conservative-line groups like House Freedom Action, Republican State Leadership Committee, America PAC, Americans for Prosperity, dumping money into this race. There's a broader narrative coming out of that side about what they view as, we talked about it earlier, activist judges, and they've been citing the sort of historic nature of the level of nationwide injunctions against some of Trump's agenda. How is that national landscape playing into this race?
Yeah, so I think we are seeing concerns at the federal level about questions about the judiciary continuing to remain independent. And I think Elon Musk's involvement in particular has raised some questions about that, where he has specifically attacked judges and called for impeachment based on various rulings. And so there is sort of this concern that that attack on an independent judiciary at the federal level is also then starting to happen at the state level, and having funders involved on both sides who are out of state, very wealthy funders being so involved in a race like this, it does really raise some concerns at the state level, I think, among the public about whether the state judiciary can remain independent, or at least can remain to appear that it is actually independent.
And in relation to the sort of escalating costs in that respect, we mentioned that this race is the most expensive judicial contest in American history. But just a couple of years ago, Wisconsin had the previous holder of that record, I guess, which was 50 plus million, I think. I mean, is the expectation just that these costs or the amount of money sloshing around for these Supreme Court races just keeps skyrocketing?
It's hard to say exactly if it'll keep climbing. I think we definitely are in a new era of this being sort of a new norm, of there being very wealthy donors contributing and there being unprecedented amounts of money spent in Wisconsin Supreme Court races. I think there are some aspects of this year's race that maybe make it a little bit unique, including it coming so soon after the presidential election. So a lot of folks are treating it sort of as a referendum on the Trump administration so far, and our upcoming elections, which will have one every year for the next 5 years in Wisconsin, won't be so close to a presidential election. There might be some factors that turn down the temperature a little bit, but I do think Wisconsin's status as a swing state and a very purple state will mean that it continues to really be in the spotlight nationally when it comes to these state Supreme Court races.
Got it. All right. Thanks, Bryna. We appreciate you helping us contextualize the race.
Thank you for having me.
You bet. All right, up next, what's the reason behind Marjorie Taylor Greene's latest outburst? We'll tell you next on Rising.